Welcome back. We have a great set of morning sessions. I wanted to let you know that Dr. Ruben Armiñana, who's the president here at Sonoma State, will be joining us tomorrow at lunchtime to give you the official welcome to the campus. So he'll be joining us. This morning we have a couple of sessions, and I wanted to introduce the moderator of these sessions, Christine Goodhart. Chris and I have known each other for a long time and worked together for 15 years, I guess. 15 years. Wow. Chris and I worked together at the University of Washington. When I was a vice something or other, vice pot roast or something, vice provolone, I don't know. And she helped lead a lot of our, first our arts initiative, but ultimately a lot of the work that we did to connect the research mission of a complex research university to communities that were typically not part of the traditional tech transfer pathways to underserved communities, rural communities, and so on. And she did absolutely phenomenal work there. Before that, in a previous life, she was at Lincoln Center Institute, which is Lincoln Center's arts education arm for all of Lincoln Center, but not just in New York. It's a national effort. I used to call it a cult, but she has is a particular approach to cultural education, fine arts education. She has a deep background in working with cultural institutions and other social institutions, and so when we started down the pathway of engaging scientific, cultural, arts organizations and libraries, we asked Chris to come and join us at CENIC to help sort of be the liaison to those communities and help us as we began to shape these initiatives last year and in the coming years. So it's really a pleasure to have Chris here moderating the next two panels, which she'll introduce in succession. So Chris, thank you.
I'm really happy to be here and really happy to be associated with CENIC. As Louis said, I've been working with CENIC for about a year, and it's been a learning curve like it is with any new organization. But one of the things that has really impressed me about this community is that front and center at all times, there's a single question that guides the work. And the question is, what does it mean to be a research and education network? And that question is answered in multiple ways every day by every associate and staff person of CENIC. I have worked with a lot of not-for-profit organizations, a lot of educational organizations, and it's surprising the extent to which a guiding question fades in operational details as those details overwhelm an organization. And that's not happened at CENIC, and it's very inspiring. And what it makes possible, that question being alive, it makes possible considering adding new members to the network, members that will both receive benefit by having high-speed broadband and expanding their activities, but also who will bring benefit to the network in terms of their resources and their mission. And so when we think about libraries, and there are a lot of librarians in this room, and I want to welcome you, I'm really excited that you're here. When we think about libraries, we know, all of us know, they're research organizations, they're education organizations, and how do we know that? I had the opportunity to travel around to communities across the state and visit with libraries. And what I became aware of over and over again is that libraries are already at the center of community networks. They have relationships with K through 12 organizations. They have relationships with higher education. They have relationships, important relationships, with social service organizations, with governmental organizations. But they're not at parity with those organizations when it comes to high-speed broadband. In fact, it's shocking how out of parity they are. And what it means is, although they're a community hub, they can't truly collaborate in all the ways they'd want to collaborate and serve citizens in all the ways they'd want to serve citizens. And so that's the inspiration behind the work that has been going on in the state of California to advocate for the inclusion of public libraries in California's high-speed research and education network. And it's just really exciting to be a small part of it. So it is the case, as Louis told you, that we tried to pull together a couple sessions this morning that would give you a window into the work that's been going on, as Louis pointed out to me recently, over the last 18 months. And I said, wait a minute, 18 months? It's a really fast trajectory for a change like this, a change that's actually starting to get national attention, right? So I stopped to think about that, and I was, well, okay. So the window we want to provide for you this morning is as follows. The first thing we want to do is give you an opportunity to hear from Jared Keller, who's the acting deputy state librarian for the state of California. And Jared kind of headed up that study, the study that looked at the current state of high-speed broadband in California. To my knowledge, that kind of a study either hasn't been done or at least hasn't yet been published. So it's really kind of groundbreaking work. He joined with CENIC and with Khalifa and with the California Library Association to pull together a group of folks that would survey every single library in the state of California and truly assess their current capacity, their current hardware, their current operation, and their aspirations. What uses would they plan for a gigabit of connectivity if they actually received it? What do they hope to do? And in a very short period of time, in a 3-month period of time, the survey was executed. There was a very high response rate, as Jared would tell you. The results were in, and they really do present a persuasive case for making this happen. You can access that study on the California State Library website, and it's also on the CENIC website in the library section. So first of all, you're going to hear from Jared. I can chime in a little bit. I worked on that study as well, so I can chime in, and Jared will present, and then we'll have some questions. So that's kind of a statewide picture of libraries, broadband, CENIC. But it's important also to look at a specific library system, how they currently function in terms of provisioning technology to their community, the strides they're making as they begin to get connected, and what the picture looks like. So one of the things I should mention, just to be clear, is in addition to this statewide initiative, CENIC recognized that it was important to pilot with a small group of library systems this initiative. So there are a group of libraries in the Central Valley, the Peninsula Library System, and then the San Francisco Public Libraries. Those are 3 systems that are being connected right now, and that kind of would serve as a test bed. And CENIC was committed to doing that, whether the statewide lobbying took 5 years or 1 year. It looks very positive right now, but that pilot initiative they were committed to from the beginning. So what you're going to hear from is you're going to hear from a group of librarians and technical staff in the Peninsula Library System who will tell you what their connectivity did look like, what it's looking like now, what they were able to do, and what they're now going to be able to do. And I'll introduce them to you also. And then as Cliff mentioned, and as Louis mentioned too, I'm really excited to hear about the digital Public Library. That's directly after lunch. Luis Herrera from San Francisco Public Libraries is going to be talking with us about that initiative and how California is contributing to it and how high-speed broadband will enable them to contribute even more deeply. So that's kind of our plan. And I'm now going to introduce Jared to you. I'm going to talk just a little bit more about the study, introduce him to you, and then after his 20-minute presentation, he'll be available for questions. We're kind of flipping these two sessions. We think it'll make a little bit more sense to have the statewide perspective first. So as I mentioned to you, I had the opportunity to travel around the state, to visit with librarians, to hear about current and future uses of technology. And it's actually hard for me to get some images and memories of those visits out of my mind because I saw such compelling things. For example, it was routine for me to go to a public library in California and see a line of patrons out the door waiting for computers, sometimes limited to an hour, sometimes limited to a half an hour. At one library, and it was in Merced, I got there quite early in the morning, and I saw a number of people sleeping under the eaves of the library, homeless people. And they woke up, and they rolled up their sleeping bags, and they got in the line, and they went in to use technology. It was very moving to me to see that, and to see that kind of visual demonstration of the need for provision of technology in some of our communities. I also, in addition to the lines, as I traveled around the state, I would see these rooms. And over the top of the rooms would be the words, California Room. I saw them in more than one library. I don't know how common they are. These rooms were stuffed full of photographs and documents and memorabilia from across California, none of which had been digitized, right? And librarian after librarian talked to me about how walking by that room troubled them. They knew that their public responsibility as a librarian was to preserve and share those materials, but they couldn't. One librarian even told me that they were the center of the gold rush, but when you do search for a gold rush, their community doesn't even show up, right? So there's a tremendous loss to the state and the nation and the world as a result of their lack of capacity to deal with those materials. The third thing I saw, which was very interesting to me, because I'm not a librarian myself, although I'm an avid library user, librarian after librarian walked me around their library. And it was like they were seeing something I couldn't see, that as a result of the ways in which patrons were coming into the library to use technology, they were reconceiving of how to organize their physical space. It was so moving to hear them talk about, well, we'll set up charging stations here, and we're going to have collaboration rooms here, and we're going to put seating here. They were totally reconceiving of the physical facility, and in so doing, reconceiving of use and of their roles in the community. So I guess the bottom line, and Jared will, I know, reinforce this, libraries and librarians are ready. And CENIC is also ready to receive them as members of the community and to hope to support the two-way interaction between current associates and the library community. So with that, I'm going to introduce Jared Keller. And as I mentioned before, he's the acting deputy state librarian for the state of California. But he has had a long career in technology, which makes him a particular asset to the library community and to the state of California. Prior to coming to the state library, well, within the state library, he was the chief information officer first, and he directed the activities of the entire Information Technology Bureau. He also worked at the state in an earlier role at the Teal Data Center to create a statewide firewall and network-based intrusion detection system, which sounds like a very good thing to me, right? You would want that. Very good thing. He also worked in the Student Aid Commission, so you can see he's been concerned with these issues and working on behalf of Californians on these issues for a long time. So Jared.
All right, thank you, Chris. Okay, let's see if this former CIO can get his PowerPoint to work. All right, look at that, it worked. Well, thank you, everybody. Really thank you, everybody, for having me here. I'm Jared Keller. I'm Acting Deputy State Librarian at the California State Library. I'm not a librarian. I do play one from the hours of 8 to 5. So, but my background is that of technology. And I'm going to talk to you about this really groundbreaking report that we did here at the California State Library. And it really is, I think it's a one of a kind in that there's been a lot of talk about doing a statewide assessment on current status of connectivity in our public libraries, but really it's never happened, I think, until this point. And this summer, boy, it's hard to believe it was, it was last summer actually, and it's been a total of 18 months for this project, which actually just seems like it was yesterday. But librarians across California rose to the charge, and we hit them with a very huge task in a short amount of time. And that was, we had them take a broadband assessment that basically assessed many different components. One was to assess what their current network speed is, what's the cost, how much are they paying for broadband connectivity. But then we also dove a lot deeper in that we also looked at their physical premises, like what type of routers they had, did they have backup power, did they have server rooms, what type of staffing did they have. And we're looking at a very, very, very comprehensive data set here, something that many have talked about in the library community but have really never gone forward with. So today I'm going to talk to you about the findings that we had in the report and really why we believe that the CENIC alternative is a good fit for our California public libraries. So today I'm going to talk to you about our survey response rate, our findings, speed of internet connection, current costs, cost and speed, readiness to support high-speed broadband, planned use of high-speed broadband, and next steps. So in California, our libraries are organized in what's called jurisdictions. There's 183 public library jurisdictions in California, and each jurisdiction has branches. A jurisdiction could be a single branch, or it could have multiple, such in Sacramento, they have over 30, or in LA County, they have over 80. So let's talk a little bit about our survey response rate. Okay, our librarians had a very short amount of time to turn around the survey. It was truly something incredible. There was two components to the survey. One was our jurisdictional survey, which was filled out by the library director. And this is where they talked about, well, what obstacles do you currently have with broadband connectivity? Or if you had enhanced broadband connectivity, what could you do with it? And then we also had our branch needs assessment. And this is when we got down to the technical nitty-gritty. So this required technical staff to also work in many cases with the city or the county IT staff, because in our public libraries, a lot of our IT is outsourced. And so city and county play a big role. So this was an opportunity for the librarians to work very closely with them. And I got to say that we had an incredible turnout, because once said, this was not an easy survey to complete. It was very not at all. So on our jurisdictional survey, we had 173 out of 183 library jurisdictions respond. That's a 97% return rate. I have Darla Gunning over here in the audience from the California State Library, who is in charge of collecting our annual statistics. And she knows what it's like trying to get statistics out of our libraries. It's kind of like herding cats. And Darla warned me. And she was right. It was tough, but our libraries really rallied to the cause, because this is important for them, and it's important for California. When our survey concluded in September of 2013, we had 883 out of 1,115 branch needs assessments. So that was a 79% return rate. In all honesty, that is not bad. That is very good. And you'll find, with similar national surveys, this is pretty high. But in February, we had a Public Library Directors Forum, and we sent out the call again. And in February, we got it up to 84%. We got 967. And as of this morning, we're at a 95% return rate on this on the survey data. I mean, that is very incredible. And in all honesty, I think it's very possible that we could even hit 100%. But I think the very high return rate just shows how important getting this data in is, because, as I'll show you here, the state of broadband connectivity in our libraries is truly abysmal. 3 weeks ago, I was at the FCC, and I was testifying in DC about the current status of broadband connectivity in California public libraries. And to be honest with you, they were appalled. I mean, we're talking California here, but yet, as I'll show, our connectivity is just really poor. So The biggest result from this is that our public libraries across California are laboring to provide internet connectivity at very low speeds. Out of those who responded to the survey, 50% responded that our library networks are at 75% or at complete capacity. Now, as additional data has come in, it's just gone just to verify these numbers even more. But what makes it even sadder is that not only are we just providing staff connectivity, but we're providing patron connectivity, Wi-Fi services. Everything is being hit on these very slow, small, oversubscribed pipes. It's a very sad state. What's even more important, I think, is when we look at these numbers. So more than 25% of our libraries are connecting at T1s or slower. I mean, and keep in mind, these are connections that are providing Wi-Fi for the public, for the public PCs, and also for staff connectivity. 52% report speeds at 10 meg or slower. I mean, almost half of us, or if not all of us, have faster than that at home. 71% report connecting at speeds below 20 meg. And fewer than 5% reported speeds of 500 meg or above. I mean, it's just really sad just to think that, because California Public Libraries, we serve the masses. We serve everybody. Our customers are 38 million Californians, and our libraries are just struggling because of poor network connectivity. As I said earlier, an average home in California has significantly higher capacity. I mean, it's sad. I just can't stress that, how disheartening this is. So here's a little breakdown of some of the stats, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later. But as I showed earlier, it's just sad what we are connecting at. As you see with these numbers here, I mean, it's amazing that in a state like California that there isn't better connectivity for our libraries. So our libraries are really paying dearly for the cost on a cost per megabit basis. So one of the key elements of this survey is that we were able to get rough estimates on basically what we project our libraries are paying. So basically anywhere between $12 million a year annually low to as high as $18 million. I mean, and this is paying for very, very slow connectivity. In fact, 85% of the costs are for speeds of 50 meg or lower. I mean, I just can't advocate enough for how much we need enhanced connectivity in our libraries. And actually, going back to this too, it's also this too that's really it's really helping resonate just how much we're paying and how little we're getting in return. And Linda, in her discussion, will be able to tell from her experience with the pilot they're doing on really how big of a difference the CENIC connection has made for what you're paying before versus what you pay after. And it is truly amazing. So we can talk next about a little annual network cost per megabit, and just see, the slower the speeds, the more you pay. The higher the speeds, the better that your ongoing costs are. So 27% of our libraries facilities operate at a T1 speed or slower and spend over $1.1 million per year. I mean, this is truly outrageous to think that they're paying. Facility? No, this is all. That's 20% of our library facilities, not each one. If each one was paying $1 million per year, I'm in the wrong business, and I'm going to go start selling T1s. Okay. So out of those who responded to our survey, 27% of them are paying $1 million per year for a T1 or lower. 14% of those spend $475,000 per year to basically provide 5 meg of service. 44% spend over $5.5 million a year for 50 megs or less. 13%, $2.1 million per year for 100 meg to 500 meg of connectivity. and fewer than 2% have a gig or above. And that is truly said. Now, in our public libraries, we actually have about roughly about 45% that do have fiber to their libraries. And as the numbers are coming in, it may be a little bit higher. But even in those cases where we do have some who do have fiber to the libraries, they may be lucky to have it lit at 5 meg or 10 meg. So there are some other issues there that we're definitely working through, because in many cases, the city or the county provide services. And not all the time do the city or the county understand the unique needs that libraries have. Because once again, libraries serve all patrons, and it's a little bit of a different model for them in understanding why libraries need additional capacity and additional bandwidth. I think where it gets real scary is when you look at basically for speeds of 1.5 meg or slower, that they're paying $4,110 per megabit annually. And for a gig of network connection, it's basically $10 per megabit annually. So, I mean, the costs tell a pretty revealing story here, guys, that we're paying a whole lot and we're getting very little in return. This is definitely why the CENIC proposal, I think, makes sense for our public libraries. So another component to our survey had to do with facilities and premise-based issues. Now, somebody who's been in the networking game for a long time, I know that 80% of new circuit installs have a tendency to fail because when you get to do the site assessment portion of it, you find out that the facility doesn't have adequate power, doesn't have HVAC, may not have the necessary plywood on the walls. So what made this study very, very compelling is that this actually did an initial bit of basic site assessment, and this is really huge in that I really think it helps really paint a picture of how ready we are to move forward with enhanced broadband. And this portion of the survey has actually got a lot of attention because other states are starting to look at this and are actually looking at replicating our survey. So for example, the State Library of Pennsylvania is in the process of doing a broadband assessment for all of their libraries, and they've decided to use ours because it provides additional data elements that they've never looked for before. But what we looked at space and equipment, library networking equipment, security access control, fire detection and suppression, power, environment, heating, HVAC, location permanency, and staff support. What our survey showed us was that 55% report that they have tech staff on site. And that's actually pretty high because the national average is much lower, so California is a little higher in that regard. We also show that we have 42% have tech staff available to them. We did show that we did have what we're calling adequate network equipment. That is, I was very relieved to find out that our libraries didn't have a bunch of old Cisco 2501s hanging around in the closets, or that's what was supporting a lot of their backbones. So that we actually have some adequate equipment in there. However, there will be a need for some upgrades. 50% had necessary backup power, and 50% had the necessary HVAC. So moving forward, it's in terms of our facilities go, things look pretty good. Another aspect of the survey is we looked at if you did have enhanced broadband, how would you use it? How would there be a benefit? So there were three main themes that came out, and one was use of digital content, instructional opportunities, and library administration efficiencies. And all of these areas had 75% or above interest. So looking at this, planned use of digital content was something that was very important for our librarians, especially building digital collections. To build digital collections, you need enhanced broadband. So if you have a T1 at your library, it's very difficult to do that. Enhanced library websites, that's really big because a lot of our libraries want to create content and we want to be able to push it out to the community. But if you don't have a pipe big enough, it creates huge challenges. Community research, definitely want to be able to expand that. I mean, our libraries are big for genealogy, just one of many things. But once again, it's hard to serve that up when you don't have the broadband. Streaming media, really big with our libraries. But unfortunately, if you don't have the pipe, it's impossible to do. and social media, makerspaces, and business incubation centers. Other thing that they're looking at is expanded instructional opportunities, individual online learning. That's unfortunately not having the bandwidth has created great constraints to our libraries. Computer classes, both virtually and locally. Having additional bandwidth makes all the difference. Instructions by community groups, group online learning, tutorials, and of course video conferencing, which is something that would be a great added benefit if we just had the broadband. And finally, under planned changes in library administration, patron support's huge. You know, as Chris painted the picture, people are just standing in line. We have people who will cruise our libraries, stay in the parking lots after hours, just so their kids can use our Wi-Fi so that they can do homework. So having additional bandwidth is critical. General administrative efficiencies are huge. Having additional broadband makes, for interlibrary loan, the future possibility is that amazing. So rather than having to manually transport a book from, say, Sonoma to Sacramento, what if it could just be scanned on a demand and immediately sent there? I mean, the economies of scale are huge. Of course, more workstation, and of course, extended wireless, Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi. You know, over 82% of our public libraries offer Wi-Fi, but unfortunately, that pipe is being shared with all the public access terminals and then staff resources. So at this point, I want to just talk about a couple quotes that I really think help show why more broadband is needed in our libraries. And this is from Deborah Mazzoli from the Belvedere Tiburon Library. The library is a community commons, a community cooperative, and a lifelong learning center. Libraries are founded on the democratic principle of providing free and equal access to knowledge, information, and idea. Expanded broadband would make it possible for libraries to continue to fulfill this role and equalize access to information and ideas for people of all income levels and all ages. Very powerful quote. This next one is from Heather Pizzuto from Carlsbad City Library. The library connects the community with information, health and employment resources, government agencies and services, learning, culture, and people. From ensuring continued access during disaster recovery to providing resources for economically struggling Californians, the library serves as a vital role in creating a resilient community. Connecting with resources is increasingly reliant on a sustainable digital infrastructure. Insufficient connection serves as a limiter. Expanded broadband capacity at the library increases the opportunities for our entire community. It supports the library's critical role through improved tools to education, family, jobs, and information resources around the world. And finally, we are already losing customers, businesses. We cannot keep up with the increasing bandwidth demand. Customers are losing their ability to conduct important business, health, life, and educational transactions because they cannot do what they need to do in their community libraries, and they often have no other place to go. It hurts the social and economic fabric of our communities. It leaves people feeling helpless, hopeless, and downtrodden. If the library won't help them anymore, who will? The need for enhanced broadband in our libraries is just overwhelming. And as a result of this report, doing the broadband assessment in our libraries, we also made a recommendation that joining the CENIC network, joining you guys, is really a logical alternative for our libraries. It gives us an opportunity to provide these enhanced connections that we need. So, as most of you are aware, in the governor's proposed budget, there was funding, $2.25 million annually, and then also $1 million that we will use in grants to help some of our libraries upgrade their equipment. So, our next steps, first and foremost, is that we have to pass the budget. Although the funding to join CENIC is in the governor's budget, we still have a long road to go. So we still need to be able to convince everybody that they want to keep it in the budget, and moving forward, this is the best thing for libraries. If it does happen, this will be possibly effective July 1, 2014, and we'll be trying to get as many libraries on the CENIC network as possible. So this was pretty much the report. I don't know, does anybody have any questions or anything that they'd like to ask?
Let me just say one thing before we take questions. As you know, the session is being live streamed, and so there's a request that if you do have a question, if you could go to that microphone and ask it, your question will be captured. That said, I don't want anybody to not ask a question because they don't want to walk all the way over to the microphone. So I totally get that. We'd like to encourage a lot of dialogue. And, you know, as I said, I worked on the report too. So Jared and I will try to answer any questions you have.
Yeah. And if I don't have an answer, I'll just try to make one up. So
we have a brave soul going to the microphone. You want to say your name too, sir?
Ross Millerick. I'm a trustee with the Nevada Unified School District. And we have just put the Hamilton Library branch in one of our facilities. We're negotiating the arrangement now, so we're very interested in this.
Cool.
So to join CENIC, CENIC's point of presence are the county offices of education, and that is supported by E-rate and E-funding in some measures. How is the funding model and the relationship with the public school sector going to work?
Wow. Okay, well, that's a great first question. So a little bit, you know, our libraries do receive E-rate. They also do receive Teleconnect. And for right now, there is a pledge of $2.25 million annually in the general fund to go help towards the CENIC subscription. Some of the other details are still being worked out, but it would be our hope that wherever we can help leverage shared infrastructure, we will help leverage shared infrastructure. I think it helps keep costs down for both the education community as well as the library community. So I'm hoping that answered the question. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, that's loud. Hi, I'm Heidi Dollamore from Solano County Library, and speaking from the library perspective, we would love to be first in line. So tell us what should we be doing now to position ourselves ready?
So first and foremost, thank you very much for providing your broadband data, which was the most important. What we will be doing is it is our hope that this will in fact be passed in the budget, and we will be in touch with you because when your director was at the Public Library Directors Forum, we went over the different phases of this, and we will be doing phase 2, which means we'll be doing a more deeper dive, and we'll be looking at those libraries that are the most poised and ready, and we'll be doing an action plan from there. So more information will be coming, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah. You can do it, Linda. That way your question is captured for all posterity.
She could just come
Good
right here.
point. She could just go to the podium.
And that's why we don't have Linda go to the microphone, guys. It's just...
So, Jared, you forgot to tell them what drove the assessment in the first place. It wasn't like we just thought we should do assessment.
No.
We were also brilliant.
Yeah. Well, part of it is there's a little brilliance of a lady sitting right over there on the microphone. And part of it was because you guys, CENIC, you guys have an incredible CEO by Lewis Fox who actually approached the library community and said, hey, why aren't libraries on CENIC? And it got the initial discussion going with then former state librarian Stacy Aldrich, and then Lewis continued to approach us, and we started to get some synergy last fiscal year and started moving towards, well, what are the possibilities of libraries connecting to CENIC? And we actually, with the help of Senator Carol Liu, there was a bill that was put in place, and we got a lot of energy going. And we kind of looked like we're, last year, without having to do a report, we're going to be able to connect libraries to CENIC. But then the legislature had asked for some additional data, and they actually gave the state librarian the legislative charge to do a broadband needs assessment and spending plan and come up with a recommendation for what would be the best way to get additional broadband connectivity to our California public libraries. So thank you very much, Linda, for that reminder.
And if I could add to that, Jared, speaking from CENIC's perspective, as I understand it, foremost on Lewis's mind wasn't just the provision of a valuable resource to public entities. It was the question, what's good for the overall education ecology of California? What's good for CENIC? How will the connection provided to libraries benefit higher education, and how will it benefit K through 12? Now, the answer to that question is going to be lived out, but I want you to know that CENIC takes that very seriously. So libraries can absolutely be an access point for higher education. They're already an incredibly important resource to K through 12. Higher education has a wealth of knowledge that can be shared with community members in libraries. So I just want to be very explicit about the fact that CENIC's interest is building a two-way relationship between CENIC as a community and the libraries joining. Other questions? Anything else you're wondering about? All right, good. Well, Jared, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here.
Oh, wait a minute. Looks like we got one more. We got one more.
Jeff!
You told me to go to the mic.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Jared probably doesn't know who I am. I'm Jeff Crosby from the San Joaquin Valley Library.
I know who you are.
Well, we talked on the phone.
Yes, we have.
I just want to share with the room a couple of little facts about what Jared was showing you there. He pointed out that about 220 public libraries in the state have 1.5 connectivity. I administer the network that serves over half of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's in the San Joaquin Valley, and it's all rural.
Yeah.
And we've got some real infrastructure challenges. And so I'm a little concerned when you're talking about addressing the folks that are ready now, when it's rural California in Tulare County, Kern County, Mariposa County, Merced County, Fresno County, Kings County, that are all but one funded at between $9 and $10 per capita per year. I also represent almost $1 million of the expenditure of that 1.5. And to give you an example of what's going on right now, we're in the process of upgrading our network from frame relay to MPLS. It was supposed to happen July 1st, and as of this point, our vendor has managed to connect 4 of our libraries. So we're now a mismatch of MPLS and frame relay, and we're still almost exclusively at 1.5 megabits. Now on the plus side, CENIC is promising to connect 8 of our headquarters libraries this year. But on the other hand, I hate to say it, we've been waiting for 6 years. So this is great, we need this, but I gotta tell you, it's not enough money, and I'm gonna tell you right now, you've got a real challenge to get connectivity to 2 of my branches that are in Yosemite National Park.
Jeff, I can guarantee, yeah, and I can guarantee you these are things that are keeping me and acting state librarian Jerry McGinney up at night figuring this out and different. You know, I used to be not as gray as I used to be before I started this project. I mean, and this is definitely issues that we are looking at, and we're actively seeking other funding options and what can we do for the rural areas. So, you know, we're in it together. So, you know, please don't think that we're forgetting about you guys, because we aren't. This is what keeps us up at night. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Jeff.